Mr. Hinds, good afternoon.
Hi, sir. Sorry, we had a bit of a internet problem a couple of minutes ago.
Well, we are at the mercy of technology. But thanks
Always.
and welcome to CWS as it is your first time.
Yes, it is.
Lance, give us a brief description of the man we've come to know as Lance Hinds, as short as possible. I know you. I know you have. I know you have a lot to say, Lance.
Um, no, at this stage in my life, I wear primarily two hats. As you would know, I returned to Guyana around in 1994. Uh, my primary hat is as the chief executive of an IT company called the Brain Street Group, which was formed when very shortly after I returned to Guyana. And by the time I got to 2003, 2004, I began to interact more in civil society organizations. And as a result of that, now my other hat is as the president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So those are the two things I do at the moment. Primarily concerned about advocating the causes of one, my industry, and two, business and the private sector in general. So that in a short
Thank you,
couple of
sir.
lines.
Thank you, sir. As president, as a businessman and president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, when you think of doing business in Guyana, what comes to mind?
Well, I remember a comment an Irishman made many years ago that it's not for the faint of heart. There are challenges, of course, whether they're regulatory or whether they are, just the whole concept of doing business in Guyana on a daily basis requires that, in essence, you have your head on. You got to be thinking all the time. Sometimes a little too much, if you ask me. But there are hurdles that we have to cross. But we continue to fight. We live here.
But the question I have for you, how did you become interested in this topic of a new Guyana?
Well, next year is going to be 50 years that we will be celebrating as an independent nation, and I think 46 years as a republic. Um, I think if we look in the mirror in 2016, I think we're going to be happy with some things, and I think we're going to be very unhappy with a lot of the other things. Some people may argue differently, but I don't believe that we are where we should be for many reasons, which we can discuss over time. But certainly now, for us to be able to thrive and prosper, we're going to have to look at a Guyana under a different paradigm. So when nobody is waiting for us, uh, we have spoken all the time about having potential. I've been hearing this for years since I was a child, and I don't know whether we have fulfilled that in the form that we would like to do so. Um, so I think it's time to really sit down and look at how we do things, how we govern, how we live, how we operate, how we handle our finances. Those are things that we need, I think, to have deep discussions now about moving forward. This is a 21st century world. We need to be able to operate in a lot better than we are at the moment. So there's a lot of work to be done. So it is really now to begin to engage in a series of discussions about how we do that and how we move the process forward. So that is an interest to me, one as a businessman and one as a citizen. I think we can do better and we should do better. And we need now to engage in those discussions to see how we go forward.
Lance, a question that plagues the diaspora, especially many who would like to return to Guyana and give their services, return to Guyana and do business and so on. How do you survive? How did you survive? I mean, many of us applaud your success, or what, and how you have made it this far. And so the question is, how did you survive, and what kept you going? Why did you stay?
Well, look, this is hard work. It means putting in a tremendous amount of work, and sometimes not necessarily. There's an old saying that says that what you put in, you get out, and while that happens in general, it doesn't happen all the time. And certainly, when I think back in terms of the kind of returns that I've gotten, I sometimes tend to think that maybe I could have done things differently. Maybe if the society was structured differently. There are a number of things that happen. I was determined to stay. I live here. I was educated here. My formative years were spent here, and I see no reason, or there was no attraction to pack up my bags and leave. But I'm not going anywhere. Certainly in the short to medium term. Even long term, I consider that as well. So if I'm going to live here and continue to live here, one of the things that certainly now that is critical for me is to see how we can help make sure that this country performs in a manner that makes us happy, makes us comfortable, and us as a society, progress and achieve the things that we should be achieving.
What are some of the things you feel that should be put in place? Some of the economic principles that should be put in place to help us make that transition to a new Guyana?
Well, let's go back a few steps, because before we get to economic principles, because first of all, lightning flashes, and tomorrow morning somebody pumps 30 billion US dollars into this economy. I'm not certain that we will know how to handle that. Mm-hmm. I think that a modern Guyana is more than economics. It's fundamental. It's also how we as citizens, how we look at things. For example, I argue that over 50 years or 50 years ago, I think we handed the stewardship of this country and with all its responsibilities and all its affairs over to our political establishment, wholly and solely. We trusted them and we gave it to them and didn't really look back after that. I think in hindsight, I don't believe that was a good idea. And I think when we look at ourselves 50 years after, I think what you see to some extent is testimony to the fact that we handed over, the country to our political leaders solely without the sort of activism that we may have had before independence. And I think one of the things that has to happen now is we're going to have to take that back. We're going to have to demand more of our leaders. We're going to have to begin to be far more activist than we are. And even I for as long as I've lived here now, I take some responsibility for that as well. And but we're going to have to get up and say, well, look, this way of doing business cannot continue. This way of how we handle ourselves politically and socially and otherwise cannot continue. And we're going to have to change things moving forward if we are. If we're going to close the country.
How does the Chamber of Commerce plan to contribute to this change? What ideas?
Well, one of the things that we have always advocated for, certainly from the narrow perspective of the chamber, is an enabling environment to allow businesses to grow, businesses to thrive, businesses to succeed, and businesses, quite frankly, to get rich. As a business person, if you invest, if you create a company and invest with it, you have a right to expect as much return on your investment as you possibly can. And I think the enabling environment needs to be set up for that. Modern legislation, people would have heard me complain in the years about lack of intellectual property laws, telecom liberalization, because these things are crucial to the way how we do business now. The economic pillars that we have depended on for, well, more than 50 years, 60, 70 years, are under challenge. These are commodity-based products that the price goes up, the price goes down, and that sends, and every time that happens, that sends shivers through this economy. So we're going to have to look at diversification. We're going to have to look at the modern ways and the modern products and the modern services that that will take us to where we need to go.
Lance, who are some of the players or some people we should be having this conversation with, or should be joining in this kind of discussion?
Well, I think everybody. Everybody is a stakeholder. Civil society, as we understand it, the private sector, government, everyone needs to be in this discussion, because it can't work any other way. We all are going to have to get on the same page. We all are going to have to and begin to have these discussions. And I think part of that, and certainly as a business support organization, I think we have to engage in awareness. I think there's a lot of education that is needed. And certainly at the citizen level, to begin to say to them that, you don't work for the government works for you. And you must be able to go in and tell your leaders that this is what we want, and there are going to be consequences if you don't do what we want. And I don't think we are there at the moment. Everyone says to you, it's amazing. Sometimes you get involved in a project and it's private sector, it's funded, and you're telling people, and somebody says to you instinctively, well, have you spoken to the Minister of Education, or have you spoken to the Minister of Youth and Sport, or have you spoken to anybody? And you say, well, no, this is something that you're doing on your own. So we look at you and say, well, so all of a sudden now, the perception is that this can't succeed because it doesn't have government intervention. And so that's a mindset. And, it's those kinds of things that you have to work on. We have to build an environment where people believe that they must be able to get up, like in other parts of the Caribbean. Youngster gets an idea and decides that he wants to push it forward, gets together with a couple of friends, finishes off the product, tries to find financing for it, whether he goes to the bank or, whether he tries to find venture capital, or whether he and some other friends get together and put money into the process. And those are the kinds of things that we have to, to encourage at the ground level. That kind of independence, which says that, you're doing things on your own, and you don't necessarily have to run to the government every time you need something.
Lance, you said that if by chance somebody pumped $10 billion into the economy or so on, we may not know what to do with it. Yet we cannot ignore that foreign investment is very important. What would you recommend as some short-term solutions to preparing the country to deal with foreign investments?
If we are talking about a modern economy, you're going to have to give comfort. To me, fundamentally, modern legislation is important. Your modern investor must feel comfortable that when he comes in, if there are issues, there are laws to protect his interest and make sure that if there's an issue, he gets satisfaction at the end of the day. Your legal framework, the effectiveness of your courts, the effectiveness of your investment offices. I don't think we've gotten that sorted out as yet. In terms of when an investor comes in and how quickly he could get his paperwork done, his paperwork processed, let's say approvals. All those things need to be done as a matter of, for example, May 12th. You go in there, the government that goes in there, to me, has to begin almost immediately there's some fundamental things that need to be addressed. And one of the things that you must do is give investors comfort. You have to do it.
Terrence in the chat room said, Lance, how would you assess the state of Guyana's digital infrastructure? What are 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, a concrete project in the works to upgrade this infrastructure? Let me reread the last question, a concrete project in the works to upgrade this infrastructure?
Well, certainly as compared to the other countries in the Caribbean, we are behind. We are still the slowest. I hear talk of plans now to speed up the infrastructure, but we are still not, we don't have the performing networks as compared to our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. That's a fact. Certainly from the business perspective, it is not there either. What has to happen before we do anything else is telecom liberalization. What that does is it allows the other players to come in and begin to put down the infrastructure and compete with each other for clientele and corporate services in Guyana. I don't know if there's any strength to the ICT infrastructure. I will say yes, in terms of penetration, it has spread over the years. More people have access to the internet at a persistent level than they would have had, let's say, about 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago. That has improved. But certainly the sort of infrastructure that we would like to see that would, one, help the growth of business. ICT is fundamental, and it comes under two pillars. ICT either comes as a cross-cutting component of all the other productive sectors, and it also comes as a productive sector by itself that could contribute significantly to GDP. In order to get all of those things done, the ICT infrastructure has to be improved. I think the projects will come along once you have more players in the market. Once they put up the kind of competing infrastructure, you will get faster speeds. You will get the kind of corporate services that are required. Nothing beats competition in terms of the provision of services. I think other companies are ready to go. Once we have the kind of open, liberalized environment, they will come in and provide the kind of services that are required.
Why should Guyana abandon the old approach to growing its economy?
Why should they abandon it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you should. I don't know if you should abandon it. But I think it needs some fundamental adjustment. For example, I always use an example. If you have this cork or a screw that you buy in the US, let's say for $8, and you're going to bring it to the Caribbean, and if you tack in, if you tack in $2 for shipping, and you tack in $2 other markup, whatever. So let's say by the time it comes to the Caribbean, it runs somewhere in the region of $12 to $13. One of the things that would happen by and large is that in many parts of the Caribbean, the average citizen will be able to afford that screw. All right? However, a large percentage or a significant percentage of the population in Guyana will begin to complain that that screw is too expensive. Now, what we would try to do as a matter of policy sometimes is we try to reduce the cost of the screw, right? Mm-hmm. But where is the pro-growth policy that says, well, let us begin to put the things in place where we give people or we build the environment so people have the economic wherewithal to be able to afford the screw. And I can replace screw with school books, for example, or uniforms for children, or the ability to buy a new car. Those are the kinds of things I think we should be working on. So we should be pro-growth as opposed to, I think we spend too much time on poverty alleviation as a concept. And while it is something that we must do, we have to find ways to begin to improve the economic position of as many average Guyanese as possible. They're Guyanese in general, in terms of that. And that is the fundamental change that we should have. We have this process where, yes, so over the 40, 50 years, yes, we are giving house lots and we are building homes and this and that and the other. I'd like to see more Guyanese be able to build their own house and buy their own house lot, go to the bank, borrow money, pay a mortgage and do these things. They must have the economic wherewithal to do that. We can't. I don't know how long we can continue to have a situation where you have these hands out, you have these handouts and you're giving people that. I think over time that should gradually change.
And Lance, how do you what are your thoughts about the growing income disparity or income gap between the haves and the have-not?
Well, that happens everywhere. Guyana is not unique in that regard. And again, to some extent, it comes down to policy. And it comes down to looking at the economy. You have to grow the economy. The economy has to be bigger. So when we are around, we are 3 billion at the end of 2014. I think the calculation was that in terms of GDP, the size of our economy is somewhere around 3 billion US dollars. However, if you do the comparison, Suriname with half the population size is 5 billion, and even Barbados with the difficulties that it's encountering at the moment is around 4.1, 4.2. Now, so now you could argue the reasons as to why that is so, but certainly when you look at those numbers, I'm not even going to talk about Jamaica and talk about Trinidad. They're simply, I think Jamaica is about 15 billion. Trinidad, of course, is somewhere near 30 billion, I believe. But clearly, when you look at what it is that we are supposed to have and the resources and all these things, we have a lot of work to do. And it is the policy that you must change to reflect that. There's got to be more diversification. We've got to encourage other types of businesses to go out there and do that. We have to become better as an export-led economy, looking at our products and see what we can actually market, produce, and sell. At a price that makes sense to all of us. We cannot continue to depend on the productive sectors that we have depended on for over the past 50 years.
Let's talk human resource, the youth. Earlier on the program tonight, Stanley Ming, Dr. David Hinds, and Kathy mentioned how important youth are, including the youth are, in the development of the country and transforming the country. What are your personal? Do you have any idea on how to include the youth, or how to empower the youth in this process, in this vision for a new Guyana?
Well, what we have been doing is for the past year is at the chamber is trying to launch youth entrepreneurship focused programs. We've worked with many in the corporate sector, Scotiabank and some others, and we have worked with them to see how we could begin to build the awareness of entrepreneurship, the importance of entrepreneurship, the role it could play in society, and the role it could play among the youth in terms of having them contribute in a sustainable and a significant way in the economy. One of the things that we're very proud about is the work that we did with, there's a Canadian volunteer organization called CUSO. And I think it is the first time that organization partnered with a private sector organization in the pursuit of looking to grow the awareness of entrepreneurship, and also through education, through training, getting them ready, and that work continues. So certainly from the business side, it is to work with the youth to see how many more entrepreneurs we could get. You need to get more business people. You need to get more entrepreneurs. You need to get you need to foster innovation a lot more. I don't think that comes. I think we are at a stage now for a variety of reasons where that does not come naturally. And so we have to begin to put together programs to foster that. One of the things that we are trying to do is, you may have seen, in Canada it's known as Dragon's Den, and in the US it's known as Shark Tank. And one of the things that we are trying to do is we're going to find a little money and put it up there and have these youngsters compete, put together a business plan and present before a panel their plans and is judged in terms of its success, and they get some funding for these efforts that they would like to undertake. So you have to build an environment for that. I mean, they're the majority of the population at this point. They have to be a focus. There is no other way around it.
There are two economists that come to mind when I think of a Guyana's economy. Mr. Carl B. Greenidge and Dr. Clive Thomas. If you could ask these guys two questions, what would you ask them? Would you ask them?
I don't know whether two alone is going to be tough, but I'm curious about their thoughts now in 2016, in terms of where they think we should be going as an economy. We have come from being from being socialist, where the government was in charge of the economy, and then we moved to a neoliberal paradigm where the government is still by and large the largest player, and they have lived through that, and they to some extent have been would have been part of the design of this economy in some form. So I would like to hear from them plainly. Where are we in where do you see yourself in 2015, and what's the blueprint, or what's the beginning of the blueprint, we're moving forward? Just when I think of where they're, the background and, the role that they have played in our economies in the first instance.
Mm-hmm. In the chat room, Carlan said, bearing in mind the bylaws of the Chamber, can the Chamber have a political program for constructive and overdue changes in the way government approaches economic development?
I don't know whether you could have I don't know whether you need a political program for that. We have a GCCI round table and a television program, and we have commented on the things that we think affect us as a chamber and what affects us as a business community. It doesn't need to be, that's not a political program. That is a business support organization that is expressing the observations and the perspective of his council and his members. We also send out a survey at least twice, once or twice a year, to gauge the temperature of our membership and the private sector in general. So it doesn't need to be a political discussion. We certainly engage as much as we can, with dealing with issues of the day that affect us, whether it's structural, jurisdictional, whether it's legal frameworks, all those things. I think the record will show that we have commented on in the past.
Lance, from where you sit in the chamber as president, if you are in a room with a group of Guyanese from the diaspora who wants to return to Guyana to invest and to set up businesses, what can you tell them to encourage them to do so?
Well, look, and I have done this before, because I have a lot of friends and associates and colleagues who ask me this all the time. First of all, tell them the truth. It is a tough environment. It needs improvement. There has been some improvement, but there are some difficulties that you're going to run into. You're going to run into bureaucratic or hurdles, and you're going to run into those things. And but despite that, I would invite you to come, because others come despite those difficulties. Large gold companies, Australian, Canadian, what have you, people are still investing despite those, despite the difficulties. So I don't think, certainly the diaspora should not say, well, we are not coming because there is the perfect environment that we would like to see, or the perfect environment that we are accustomed to in the US, Canada, or Britain. That does not exist. You and I have friends and schoolmates who have thrived and prospered in this economy and have done tremendously well. So and they will tell you that look, it's rough, and there are some days where they complain about things not happening, not working, but it doesn't mean that they're packing up their bags and leaving at the moment. So yes, it is not the easiest of environments, but still I think that if you're coming in, then you're coming in to to do some serious things. One of the things I would say, however, is that, look, we're a small economy at the end of the day. We have 750,000 people. And I think if anybody is coming in, I would certainly come in with a more export-led perspective. I sometimes am troubled by some of the people who come to me and who want to leave a large market like the US and Canada and England. I want to come here and make money. And I mean, you're free to do so, but I'm saying it might make a lot more sense to see how you could come in and use here as a backstop or a production center or whatever it is, to see whether you can continue to tackle the US and the other mature markets, to see whether you can penetrate there using the price advantage that you have here so far. So that's the kind of discussion that I would engage in, I don't think it should be a case where you're not coming. You are born here. And I say this again and again. If you come in here and lay down plans and equipment, and you're hiring staff, and you're paying taxes, and you're doing all the things that you're doing as a proper person, you have as much rights as anybody else. And don't let anybody tell you different.
Lance, I hate when time runs out. So you have to come back, because we just started to scratch the surface of this discussion. But I can't let you go without talking about May 11th elections. What does that mean? What does it mean to you personally?
I hope, and I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about the lead up to the election itself and the post-election. I really hope we get to a point of discussing some issues. It is April 12th, and we are still mudslinging, by and large. Everyone says that they're waiting, yes, the manifestos are coming out shortly and so on and so forth. But I think it's time that everyone sits down and begins to have proper discussions and provide the vision as to where they're taking this country. Now they should do it. I think that if there are going to be debates, they all should engage in them and be able to answer the nation's questions as openly as they possibly can in terms of where their respective parties believe that this nation should be taken. Their whole thoughts on governance and economics and jurisdictional supports, children, local government elections, and all of the things that have been on the on the deck for so long that need to be resolved. I think we need to get to a point where the majority of citizens are comfortable that the process is fair, the process is transparent. Certainly, as the president of the chamber, we have met continuously with GCOM, and they have said to us on the private sector the mechanisms that they're putting in place. There are some questions. They seem willing to answer questions that are brought up. And the political party must do their work. So, go check the list, do the verifications, do what you're supposed to do during the political season. Make sure you're comfortable. And then what we have to do on May the 11th is, once we have that comfort, we are going to have to find a way to accept the results regardless of who's doing it, without causing significant disruption on the thing. May 12th, the government in power, once everything goes well, should be getting down to the business of taking this country where it's supposed to be. Deal with all the outstanding matters, legislation, whatever it is, and begin to get to work. That is where we should be at May 12th.
Lance, thank you, my brother. I look forward to this conversation again.
Yeah, man.
So I'll be reaching out to you.
No problem.
All right, man.